Hello and welcome to the Park Life Podcast. My name is Mike. I'm a travel agent that specializes in all things Disney. This is episode 54 of the Park Life Podcast, and it's going to be about the history of Walt Disney World. So we'll call today Chapter 1. Along the way, if you have ideas for future chapters or maybe an appendix, please put it in the chat. I would love to explore those for you. But today, Chapter 1, we're going to talk about why Florida. Have to take a step backwards, though, before we talk about why Florida and talk about what it is that Walt Disney himself was looking for. His primary goals were to find large land areas for future expansion, not just for what he wanted to do then and there, but for future expansion. I thought that was pretty ingenious. He was looking for a more immersive area, so an experience that would be providing more than what Disneyland provided its guests. He needed to find low cost, vast, undeveloped area to work with, and a climate that would be conducive for him to keep his park open year round. Disney surveyed a number of locations before he finally landed on Florida. He looked at areas outside of St. Louis, Missouri, Niagara Falls, New York, outside of New York City. He looked in his hometown of Marceline, Missouri. He looked at Baltimore/Washington, D.C. He looked in areas in New Orleans and, of course, Central Florida. His goal was to find something that was along or east of the Mississippi River with the intent of drawing the East Coast crowd. He knew Disneyland was not pulling guests from the far eastern side of the United States. Back in the 50s and 60s, travel was a little bit different than we know it today. So his vision back in the 60s was to have something on the eastern half of the country to draw the population there. He wanted to build a new park in a place that gave Walt the ability to expand, not just succeed. In the 1960s, his vision was a comprehensive resort with hotels, restaurants, and shops. Pretty amazing in the 1960s what he was envisioning and what we have today in Walt Disney World with the parks, over 20 resorts, multiple restaurants, and of course, shopping like Disney Springs. He needed to find something that he just did not have in Disneyland. Think about what he did in Disneyland in California. He was landlocked, did not have that expansiveness that Disney World provided him. On November 17th, 1963, Walt flew over and toured the Orlando area for the very first time. He liked the transportation options that were available in that location. There was a planned I-4 and Florida Turnpike project that was coming. They would provide the location great accessibility. There was also at the time what was called McCoy Air Force Base. Now, McCoy Air Force Base does not live there any longer today, but if you've ever flown to Disney, you've flown in and out of McCoy Air Force Base. That Air Force Base, when it was decommissioned, became the airport that we all know as MCO in Orlando. Disney liked that that would provide additional accessibility for guests who were going to fly in and out of the area. It was a big factor in his decision. Once Disney decided to go with Florida, he created a bunch of dummy or shell companies to buy lots of land. This helped prevent the price of the land being driven up. If one buyer was known to be buying large areas of land and continue to buy, those landowners would have jacked the price up, costing Disney a lot more money. This was again a very smart, ingenious thing for Disney to do back in the 1960s for what we have today in Florida and Walt Disney World. During touring, Walt identified the location he wanted Epcot to be placed. Now, it's important to note a handful of things here with that. Epcot, in case you didn't know, is an acronym that stands for Experimental Prototype Community of Tomorrow. In the 1960s, say Epcot to save me all the words, Epcot for Walt Disney himself was not an amusement park or a theme park. It was an actual planned community to serve as a test bed for new city living innovations for the future. So Walt's vision in the 1960s for Epcot was not a theme park, it was an actual community. The quote unquote Florida project began in the 1960s. Once Walt decided on Florida, started buying the land, the Florida project was born. Construction started in the 1960s. At the time, over 25,000 acres of land was purchased. Today, in 2025, nearly one third of that land, approximately 7,500 acres, has been developed. So, Walt's vision of having an expansive area that would allow him to have immersion and expand when he needed to is exactly what he still has today, with over two-thirds of the land that Disney owns still being undeveloped. Walt's original plan in the Florida project was to build a theme park, which we now know today as Magic Kingdom, but also the planned community. Incredible to think what that land could be had Walt Disney lived long enough to see it happen. On December 15th, 1966, Walt Disney died during the planning of the complex. He never saw a shovel or a tractor begin construction on Walt Disney World. Amazing. After his death, the company actually considered canceling the Florida project in its entirety and not doing anything with Florida. However, Walt's brother Roy Disney stepped out of retirement to take over the project to ensure that he could keep Walt's dream alive. In 1967, the year after Walt passed away, construction actually began on the Florida project. Now, the Disney board and Roy Disney at that time decided to scrap the idea of the planned community project. That would, as we know today, later on become Epcot. Epcot Center is the name of the original theme park. It opened on October 1st, 1982. So 16, almost 16 full years after Walt passed away, and several years after Roy passed away. Many of Walt's urban concepts that he had planned for his community were adopted by the community of Celebration, Florida, when that area was built in Florida. The Magic Kingdom opened on October 1st, 1971, approximately 4 years after construction began. Think about technology today versus what technology was like back in the 1960s. Thinking about the undeveloped land and a lot of that being marshy swampland. It's pretty fascinating that they opened 4 years after construction began. The Contemporary Resort opened in time for the Magic Kingdom to open. Polynesian Resort opened shortly after park opening. So you stop there for a second before I go on and think in about 4 years, they built the Magic Kingdom that opened in October of 71. They built the Contemporary Resort and they had the Polynesian Resort opening a month later. But that's not all. The Palm and Magnolia golf courses opened weeks before the theme park opened. So that's additional construction that Walt Disney Company was taking on in that 4 year project. Fort Wilderness Lodge, or really Fort Wilderness Resort, that was primarily camping at the time, opened a month after the park opened. So again, think about in the 1960s into early 70s, all of the construction that was happening, and Walt saw none of it. One day after the park opened, so on October 2nd, 1971, Roy Disney dedicated the property and declared it to be named Walt Disney World. That's where the name became synonymous with the park, and we know it today as Walt Disney World, WDW. Sadly, on December 20th, 1971, so just 2.5 months after Walt dream of the theme park opening and Roy dedicating it, Roy Disney himself passed away. But he did live long enough to see his brother's project take off and actually happen. In 1971, when the Magic Kingdom opened, park admission for adults was $3.50, for juniors under the age of 18 was $2.50, and for kids under the age of 12, $1 admission. However, back then, when the park opened, the rides you had to purchase tickets for. So while admission into the park was incredibly cheap, you still had to buy tickets for the rides. Still a very far cry from the $150 or so park admission that we see today to get into the Magic Kingdom. So that's why Florida, and a little bit about the project itself and the timeline and the things that happened, and really the almost incredible thought that what Walt had in his mind of expansion, innovation, community, a theme park, resorts or hotels, restaurants and shops, all the things he thought of in the 1960s, all of the things that he never saw complete or even start, his brother ensured happened. Without Walt's ingenious thoughts and vision, without Roy's decision to step out of retirement and see it happen, we wouldn't have Walt Disney World that we have today. I'm not so sure we would have Walt Disney World at all. Who knows? It's fun to speculate, but it's very, very thankful that those things happened. Walt and Roy made them happen. So that's it for chapter one of the history of Walt Disney World. In no particular order, some of the other chapters that we'll cover in time: specific opening day attractions and their origins and master plan, evolution of theming and technology, stories behind iconic elements. We'll talk about the evolution of Fast Pass and Genie Plus and Lightning Lanes, the evolution of Walt Disney World transportation, the role of the cast members, and far more chapters. These will probably be shorter episodes than some of my other podcasts, but because they're chapter on chapter on chapter, I want to keep them fun and interesting. I hope you enjoyed today's. These podcasts drop on the Park Life Podcast YouTube channel and Spotify channel on Monday mornings at about 5 a.m. Eastern Time. We also do a live podcast on Tuesday evenings at 7:30 p.m. Eastern. Those can be found on the Park Life Podcast YouTube channel and on my TikTok channel, Mike_Disney Travel. I enjoy those because they're very interactive. I'll answer questions, I'll cover news and rumors, any new promotions that come out, and then we have some fun and interactive with games, trivia, fun questions, things that I can come up with that just help engage all of us in having some fun about Walt Disney World and Disney itself. You can find me on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Mike_Disney Travel. You can also find me at Facebook on Mike's Magical World Vacations. I'd love to work with you and your family on an upcoming Disney trip, whether it's Disney World, Disneyland, Disney Cruises. Love to work with you. But that's it for today. Hope you have a great day. And when you wake up tomorrow, remember it's a great day to be alive. Bye, everybody.